All right, let's continue to page 5370.
I am there, yes.
All right, and do you see the text that said "Pops will be proud"?
Yes.
And then that came from Jason, correct?
Correct.
And this is at about 8:31 p.m. It says 2031.
Yes.
And then he responds 9:19, correct?
Correct.
And then you state life starts now, correct?
Correct.
And Jason's response to that is no more excuses, correct?
Correct.
No more lies, correct?
Correct.
And you respond, I thought about it a lot, and I think I'll call Wintership to return the tattoo gift so I can for sure pay for therapy, correct?
Correct.
And continue on, it's more important, correct?
Correct.
All right, and he responds, it's up to you, not even 100% sure if you can, correct?
Correct.
And you say that's why I'll call, correct?
Correct.
And continuing to the next page, which is 5371, you see the last text on, or Instagram message on that page is from you to Jason, correct?
Correct.
And it states you are loved, correct?
Correct.
And then good night, correct?
Correct.
And then Jason responds, good night, Ezra, correct?
Correct.
And then he states, you don't understand, he builds bicycles, correct?
Correct.
And then says guys, correct?
Correct.
And then these wheels, correct?
Correct.
And your response to that at 9:38:11 is an Instagram that says, my husband, correct?
Correct.
And his response is dream wildly, correct?
Correct.
And that would be the last Instagram outside of it looks like a photo or some type of link that's received between you and Jason Mengel on March 21st of 2018, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. You can keep that up there for now. We'll probably be talking a little more about that. So let's get to March 22nd of 2018. You woke up that morning, correct?
Yes.
And you had to find your keys that morning, correct?
I knew where they were, yes.
But your dad had hidden your keys, hadn't he?
He didn't hide them. He said he hid them, but he just placed them on top of the cupboard, the tall cupboard.
All right. A place that would be harder for you to reach, correct?
Yes, I'm not very tall.
Be harder for you to reach, correct?
Yes.
And he did that because he told you you shouldn't be driving, correct?
Yes.
And I think in your interview with Detective Prock that we heard the other day, there was something about insurance, correct?
Yes. It was about insurance.
And you had to walk to get your car, correct?
That is not correct.
Okay, your car wasn't at the gas station in Stanley?
No.
And then you drove over to Alex's house, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that's the first place you went when you got to
Eau Claire?
Eau Claire, yes.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. But you told Officer Reeves when you talked to him that you went to Racy's first, didn't you?
Which officer was Officer Reeves?
Officer Reeves was the Eau Claire police officer that you talked to at the hospital on March 22nd of 2018.
There's a lot about speaking with individuals in the hospital that I don't remember.
Okay. You told Detective Prock when you were interviewed on March 23rd that the first place that you went, I'm sorry, on March 24th, you told Officer Prock that the first place that you went was Racy's, correct?
Yes,
That wasn't true, was it?
I had misstated yes.
It wasn't true, correct?
Yes.
And the reason that you were going to meet Alex was to return a heating pad and a bookmark?
I had said that yes. I just had some various things. The heating pad for sure.
And there was an enclosed porch on Alex's residence, correct?
Yes, it's
And
Enclosed.
you could have left the heating pad and the bookmark on that porch, correct?
yes.
You never told Detective Prock when you talked to him on March 23rd that you were going to or wanted to show Alex your journals, did you?
No.
And you never told Detective Prock when he interviewed you on March 24th that you wanted to show Alex your journals, did you?
No, I don't believe I did.
And you never actually showed Alex your journals, did you?
We just discussed them, yes.
You didn't show him your journals, did you?
Not physically, no.
That's a no?
Yes. Sorry.
And you agree that when you went to see Alex on March 22nd, that Alex was afraid of you, correct?
That is not correct.
All right, well, let's take a look. Can you turn to 5161 in Exhibit 420?
Excuse me, Counsel.
Yep.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes. Your Honor, it appears that the times may be off by an hour. I'd have to look at it to be sure, but I'm not going to dispute the counsel is correct, but it may be that the times on March might be at the end, towards the end of March, might be off by an hour. They might have been adjusted for standard time versus daylight savings time. So,
Yes, I showed Mr. DeFore the original what the actual UTC was, and it was daylight savings time by then.
Yeah.
That's all.
daylight savings time, and I understand, and I checked it, would have started March 11th, and I don't have a problem with the court taking judicial notice of that.
Any issue with that?
No.
Okay, the court will take judicial notice of that fact.
Are you at 5161?
You said 5161?
Yes.
Just about there.
You're there, let me know.
Yes.
All right. And just so that it's clear that we're on the same page as the last Instagram on there, say yes, hun, on 5161?
That is correct.
Okay. Go up a few from there.
Yes.
Fifth one up from the bottom is an Instagram from yourself to Jason Mengel, correct?
Just for accuracy, Counsel, could you please state what the date of that conversation was?
Sure. This is on March 12th of 2018, correct?
Yes.
All right. And the fifth one up there is, quote, "he's scared of me," correct?
Yes.
And you're talking about Alex Woodworth in that conversation, are you not?
Yes.
But you were not afraid of Alex, correct?
No.
You went back from Alex's to Racy's after you were there the first time, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, you met with Max Martinson, correct?
Yes.
All right. And You eventually went to Max's apartment,
Yes.
exchanged paintings, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then you returned to Racy's, correct?
Yes.
When you got to Racy's the first time that morning, you parked on the street, correct?
Yes.
Shut your car off, correct?
I don't remember exactly, but I might have, yes.
And then went into Racy's, correct?
Yes.
All right. Came back out, started your car back up again, correct?
Yes, I drove my car.
And then drove to Max's, correct?
Yes.
Shut your car off when you got to Max's?
No.
Okay. Went back to Racy's, parked again, correct?
Yes.
All right. Shut your car off and went back into Racy's?
I'm not exactly sure if I shut my car off that time or not.
And I just want to talk very, very briefly about the clothes that you were wearing that day. I want to start with that yellow shirt that you had on, okay?
Yes.
That was the shirt,
Talking about a yellow shirt or yellow sweater?
no, the yellow shirt.
The last layer of clothing, the yellow tiger shirt, I believe?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh,
That,
inside.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
That's why I was confused, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And that yellow shirt was the one that was closest to your body, correct?
Yes.
And that was actually Jason Mengel's shirt, wasn't it?
That was one of his shirts, yes.
All right. And one that you had referenced to Jason Mengel as sleeping next to because it had his smell on it, correct?
Yes.
So that shirt was important to you, correct?
It was a shirt, yes. I just
And
liked it.
In fact, you had told Jason Mengel in an Instagram message that you were concerned that it had been washed and that would have washed his smell off of it, correct?
Yes, the boyfriend smell.
And you were wearing some jeans, correct?
Yes.
Right. And in fact, you told Detective Prock that you had made those jeans, correct?
Yes, they were very large when I bought them, and I really liked them, so I had to tailor the waist in quite a bit.
Ma'am, my question is, you told Detective Prock that you made those jeans, correct?
Yes.
You didn't actually make those jeans, did you?
I didn't manufacture them, no, but I did alter them.
Ma'am, you didn't actually make those jeans, correct?
No, I did not manufacture those jeans.
You didn't make those jeans, correct?
Asked and answered.
It hasn't been yet,
Well,
that's
it
the
hasn't been
problem.
answered. I think just have to answer the question.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Once you got to Alex's apartment the second time,
Yes.
you knocked on the door the second time, correct?
Yes, knocked on the door.
And then you saw Mr. Studing, correct?
Yes, I seen Dave.
And eventually Alex came down and answered the door, correct?
Yes.
And you, without any question, went up to Alex's room with him, correct?
There was brief conversation before we went upstairs, yes?
Right. But then eventually you went up to his room, correct?
Correct.
Didn't protest that at all, correct?
That was our meeting space.
You didn't protest that at all,
No.
correct? You didn't say, let's meet down here in the living room, let's talk outside, let's talk in my car, anything like that, correct?
No, I was comfortable going to his room.
And you had no idea if Mr. Studing was staying, leaving, what he was doing, correct?
No, I just assumed he was home.
And went into Alex's room, correct?
Correct?
Door was closed, correct?
Yep. Yes.
And you said you started talking to him about your relationship with him, correct?
Yes, and many other things.
And you told Alex in that conversation that your relationship, you thought that your relationship with him was wrong, correct?
Not that it was just wrong, that I had a lot of mixed feelings about it, and that it shouldn't really have gone the way it did.
you said, you told Alex that you thought the relationship made you feel really like gross and like wrong and things like that, correct?
Yes, it brought me a lot of anxiety and guilt.
Question is, you told Alex that it made you feel really like gross and like wrong and things like that, correct?
I don't remember specifically saying it on that day, no.
You told Detective Prock that that's what you told Alex, correct?
Yes,
All right. And you asked Alex if he felt the same way about the relationship, correct?
I believe I asked him questions, yes.
And Alex told you he didn't feel the same way about it, correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right. In fact, he didn't feel guilty at all about your relationship, correct?
Yes, he didn't feel guilty at all.
While you're in Alex's room, he never threatened you at all, correct?
No,
Never told you he was going to harm you, correct?
correct.
Never told you that he wanted to have sex with you one more time, correct?
Correct.
And then Jason got there at some point in time, correct?
Yes,
Came into the bedroom, by you,
Yes.
correct? You didn't tell Jason that there were any problems, correct?
correct.
In fact, told Jason everything's fine, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
And then Jason left for a time, correct? He left, right?
Well, he went downstairs and outside and waited by my car.
So he left from Alex's bedroom, correct?
From the bedroom, yes.
And you stayed in Alex's bedroom for at least a little while after Jason left, correct?
Not long after, no.
You stayed in Alex's bedroom for a little while after Jason left,
A
correct?
little while, yes.
And then you left, correct?
Yes,
Alex left the
Yes.
bedroom, correct?
yes,
And you went outside at that point, correct?
yes,
And when you went outside, the Eau Claire police officers were there, correct?
that is correct.
There were two of them, right?
Yes,
And they asked you if everything's okay, and you told them everything's fine, right?
yep, yes,
And at the time you met with the Eau Claire Police Department, you knew about all the things you testified about that related to your relationship with Alex previously, correct?
yes,
You knew all about these journal entries or these essays that you've talked about, correct?
yes,
You knew at that time all about the things you testified about your prior sexual relationship with Alex Woodworth, correct?
they weren't on my mind at the time, but yes,
And you knew all about the things that you've testified this morning that made you uncomfortable about your relationship with Alex, correct?
yes,
Despite that, you told the police that everything was fine, correct?
at that time, during that part of the day, I believed everything was fine, that is correct.
Your Honor, I'd ask that everything before that is correct be stricken as unresponsive to my question.
No, Judge, I would object to that. Many witnesses have added something in as they've explained their answers. They're entitled to explain.
I'm just going to let the answer stand. Go ahead, continue, please.
And your plan was at that point in time to go someplace public to talk to Alex, correct?
It's what we talked about, yes, it was
Something.
on our minds, yes.
Something like a park, correct?
Yes, we had mentioned it together.
And you were driving when you left from there, correct?
That is correct.
Oh, by the way, when you were there, Officer O'Neill asked to see your driver's license, correct?
That is correct.
And he asked you if you could find it, correct?
Correct.
And your license was in your wallet, correct?
Correct.
All right. Your wallet was in that center console of the car, correct?
I believe so.
Well, in fact, you testified on direct
Yes.
that
Yes, it was.
there, correct?
That is correct.
Center console also was where the knife was, correct?
I don't know exactly where the knife was. I believe it was in the center console.
All right, and you told Officer O'Neill you couldn't find your driver's license, correct?
I think I was having trouble shuffling around. Middle console is full of a lot of papers and things also.
You told Officer O'Neill you
Yes, that I
couldn't
was having
find your
trouble finding it, yes.
driver's license, correct?
That is correct.
Can you describe your wallet for us?
Just kind of a regular wallet.
How big is it?
Smaller, just a regular leather wallet. Your
I mean,
typical
is it
wallet.
a wallet that you put in a pocket, or is it a larger wallet that you'd put in your purse?
It's a smaller one. I don't usually carry a purse.
So, after you're done talking to the officers, they leave, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And then you talked for a short time with Jason Mengel, correct?
That is correct.
And then drove off, correct?
Yes, we left.
And when you drove off, you were the one driving the car, correct?
That is correct.
And you didn't, Alex had gotten in your car, correct?
Yes.
Didn't tell him you didn't want him in there, did you?
No.
Had no issue, in fact, with Alex coming along with you, right?
No.
You wanted to continue to talk to Alex, correct?
Yes.
Admitted as Exhibit 419B. You see that?
Yes.
All right. And that, you recognize, this is Alex's residence right here?
Yes, I can see that.
And you were driving, right? Correct?
Are we speaking of after we had left the residence?
Right, after you left the residence, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you said you wanted to go to a park, correct?
Yes.
You were familiar with Phoenix Park, because in fact you mentioned Phoenix Park to
Yes.
Detective Prock, correct?
Yes.
Phoenix Park is right here, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And Half Moon Park is right here, correct?
That is correct.
Both of those are within a few blocks of Alex's residence, correct?
Yes.
You didn't drive to either of those parks, did you?
It wasn't really concrete, so I just drove.
You didn't drive to either
No.
of those parks, did you?
No.
Instead, you headed west on Cameron Street, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And just basically headed out of town, correct?
Yes, just basically.
You wanted to be in a place where it was in public, correct?
Correct. That had
That
been
would
mentioned.
imply other people being present, correct?
Yes, that would imply that.
Phoenix Park would be a location where other people would be present, wouldn't it?
At times, yes.
All right, and Half Moon Park would be a place where other people would be present, correct?
At times, yes.
And you didn't go to either of those locations, correct?
No.
You passed by a park as you got into Dunn County, correct?
I'm not aware of any parks in Dunn County.
Oh, you drove on County Highway E, correct?
No, I'm going to object. That's
I-
misstating the testimony because she said
Really
they
don't.
switched drivers and,
Well, she said she didn't know when.
Yeah, it's not clear when and where they switched drivers, so you may continue this line of questioning.
I honestly was just driving. I wasn't really paying attention to where I was going. I was just on a road driving.
Going to someplace public to talk, correct?
That had been mentioned, but sometimes we drive around and we talk.
Now, you said that as you're driving, you started to feel uncomfortable, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Didn't turn around and just come back into town or ask Alex to get out of the car? Didn't do either of those?
No.
Now, I seem to recall when you talked to Detective Prock, that you told him that Mr. Sipple seemed familiar. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you know, now at least certainly, Mr. Sipple lives on 430th Ave, correct?
That is correct.
And 430th Ave happens to be the exact road that you turned off of when you turned off of County Highway E, correct?
Yes, that's the road Alex turned off of.
And you told Detective Prock, actually, strike that, withdraw that. The stop along 430th was at the very first field road that happens as you got to 430th, correct?
Yes, that's where he had stopped driving.
And I want to talk a little bit about the circumstances once you got there. You said that the vehicle got stuck and just couldn't get it out, correct?
The first time it got stuck, I maneuvered it, but the second time, no, I could not get it out.
Yep. And that's what I meant, and
Okay,
thank you
thank
for
you.
clarifying that.
Yes.
Once it got stuck, you said you sat for a period of time on the trailer hitch, correct?
Yes, after looking around a bit.
5-10 minutes you sat on the trailer hitch?
I can't tell you an exact time, no.
Short period, long period?
It felt like a long period of time.
All right. You don't know, though?
No.
All right. And then Alex came up to you and talked to you, correct?
He didn't really speak. It was more of an action.
Okay. He hugged you, you said, correct?
From behind, he approached me and he hugged me.
So let's talk about your getting in the back seat. You
Yes.
said you got in the back seat and your story today was that you laid down on your back, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you told Detective Prock?
No, I'm going to object. That misstates the testimony. She said she went on the back seat, she was curled up in a certain way, and then she turned on her back.
Yes.
Well, the jury heard the testimony, so they decide.
You told Detective Prock that you were actually on, and, well, all right, well, let's just complete it then. Your story that you told the jury today was that when Alex got into the car, you were on your back, correct?
Yes, I had repositioned myself after I felt him approach.
Ma'am, my question was, your story that you told today when you testified was that when Alex got on top of you, you were on your back, correct?
Yes, when he had gotten top of me, I was on my back.
Right. And in fact, when you met with Detective Prock and then Investigator Conkey, you told them that you were on your stomach when Alex got on top of you, did you not?
I don't exactly remember, no, but I've seen it and I've read, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, do any of you need a recess? Maybe nobody wants to,
Your Honor, I'll get back to this later,
Okay.
that's fine.
I just wonder, and if,
Yeah,
you let the bailiff.
that's all right.
If you need a recess.
Just
Okay.
trying to find it. We'll get back to that. But you never told Detective Prock that that Alex told you to go lay down in the seat, did he? Did you?
I believe, no, I did not.
I'm sorry?
No, I did not, no.
In fact, the only thing you told Detective Prock was about going into the back seat to look for something to get you unstuck, correct?
Yes,
And you told Detective Prock that it was when you were in the back seat trying to find something to get the car unstuck that Alex supposedly attacked you, correct?
correct.
You never told Detective Prock that the defendant put the scarf over your eyes, did you?
No, I had not said that.
And if I understood your story as you told it to us today, this morning, or actually this afternoon, you need Alex in the groin, and the knife fell out of his hand, correct?
Correct.
And then you grabbed the knife, correct?
Correct.
It's not what you told Detective Prock, is it?
I don't believe so. I would
In
have,
fact, you told Detective Prock that you grabbed the knife by the blade, correct?
I believe I've said that, yes.
All right, and got it away from Alex by grabbing it by the blade, correct?
I might have said that, yes.
And you said that it hurt a lot when you did that, correct?
Correct.
Judge, if he's going to do that, I just asked that there be exact lines and that she be shown a transcript, because she testified she doesn't remember exactly what she said, but she's acknowledged whatever's in there is
This is-
accurate regardless of her memory. So I would ask she be given an opportunity to look at the transcript before she answers her questions.
This is cross-examination, Your Honor.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Could I have Exhibit 196, please?
Is that the 23rd or the 24th? Counsel?
Exhibit 196
The
is
24th.
one of the articles referenced by Dr. Tillotson.
Oh. I'm sorry. I'd like to approach.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right, there's no objection out there at this time.
Please switch to the overall position for just a moment. Now, you were present in court earlier in the trial when Dr. Tillotson testified, correct?
Correct.
And you were also present in court when Dr. Tillotson testified at an earlier hearing, correct?
Correct.
And you were present when Dr. Tillotson showed a photo that is part of Exhibit 196 that shows what a hand would look like when it would grab a knife by the blade, correct?
That's not his testimony. What he testified about was what was in a learned treatise by Spitz and Fisher.
Specifically, you saw this photo at both the pretrial hearing and at the hearing at this trial, correct?
Yes.
So now your testimony was that you got the knife out by kneeing Alex in the groin, correct?
That is correct.
Let's talk about where you were when you stabbed Alex various times. First off, which hand did you hold the knife in?
I assume it was my right hand.
So you were holding the knife in your right hand, correct?
Correct.
All right. And if I understood your testimony correctly, there was one time you stabbed Alex when he was outside of the car,
Yes.
and that was in his side?
Yes.
Which side?
I can't answer that.
Okay. You don't remember which side?
I just remember reaching around and stabbing Alex, yes.
In the side,
Yes.
all right. And he had his coat on at the time, correct?
Yes.
And you also the rest of the times you stabbed him, he was in the car, correct?
Correct.
He was on top of you, correct?
No.
You stabbed him, when you stabbed Alex in the side of his head, he was in the car, correct?
Correct.
When you stabbed him in the genitals, he was inside the car, correct?
Yes.
Right. When you stabbed him 3 times in the left side of his neck, he was inside the car, correct?
That had happened in the car, yes.
Right. When you stabbed him the other 2 times in the left side, he would have been in the car then, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And when you stabbed him in the stomach, he was in the car, correct?
Yes.
When you stabbed him in the right leg, he was in the car, correct?
I don't know precisely each wound. I just know all of this happened in the car, yes.
And, well, and you were here when Dr. Mills testified to where Alex was all stabbed, correct?
Yes,
All right. And you stabbed him then the 2 times in the back when he was in the car, correct?
yes,
And the 3 times that you sliced across his neck, he was in the car, correct?
correct.
Where was Alex in relation to you specifically when you stabbed him in the head?
He was facing me.
All right. How close to you was he?
He was very close to me.
Within inches?
I can't tell you within inches he was in front of me. He was face to face with me.
You could see his face?
Yes,
All right. And you said you didn't have your glasses on at the time, correct?
correct.
Right. So if you could see his face, he was probably pretty close to you, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you stabbed him using your right hand, correct?
I stabbed him, yes.
And you said you were using your right hand to stab him, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And when you sliced him across the neck those 3 times, was he
I know,
also?
I'm going to object to sliced across the neck 3 times, and it's been asked and answered.
Well, in a different way. You may proceed, overruled.
All right, well, let's do it this way. When you sliced him across the neck the first time, he was right in front of you then as well?
I don't remember distinct separate times.
Okay, well, when you sliced him across the neck, then all 3 times, he was right in front of you, correct?
Yes.
Within inches?
I don't know within inches. He was
What?
in front of me.
Okay, again, you could see him at that point in time, correct?
I can see a person is in front of me. It's if I can see detail or not.
Just so that we're clear, you took the word boy and carved that into your arm yourself, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you take off that blue flannel shirt before you did that?
I believe so, no.
All right. Did you cut through this blue flannel shirt to do that?
Yes,
All right. Did you take off the blue, and I'm sorry, I didn't understand exactly what you said. It's spotted, or it's not spotted, it's actually got something else on it?
it appears to have small plants on it.
Okay. Did you take that shirt off before you carved boy into your arm?
No, I hadn't taken my clothes off.
All right. So you just cut through those shirts?
I cut through a shirt. I don't remember if my other shirts were pushed up or if something else was in the way. I remember cutting through my blue shirt, yes.
I'm sorry?
I remember cutting through my flannel, my
Okay.
outer shirt.
And the other shirt was underneath it, right?
Yes,
And the spot where you had boy carved into your arm was up almost to your elbow where it started, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And actually, Your Honor, just so that we're clear on it, could you switch to my computer, please? I'm showing Exhibit 317 at this point in time. That's your arm, correct?
Correct.
All right, and it appears to be almost up to your elbow where the B starts, correct?
It's lower than that,
Right.
but it's near, yes.
All right, and then continues down to about probably halfway down your forearm, correct?
I would say the word itself is in the middle of my forearm.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so after you did, and you were, I think you said by the trunk of the car when you did that?
Yes,
All right. And after you did that is when you took off running from there?
yes.
All right, down that muddy road?
It was stumbling, falling. It wasn't like I was running, but
Okay.
running in a
All
sense,
right.
yes.
That's fine, and fair enough. But that's when you took off down the road, correct?
Correct.
All right. And went right from the trunk down the road, correct?
Correct.
Can we switch to my computer again? I have Exhibit 72 up. So could you, and here, I'm going to give you a laser pointer. Could you show us on here where Alex was laying down when you left from that area? You said it was by the trailer, so I just want to know exactly where he was.
He was, I don't know, he was in this area.
Okay. So the area around by the number 9 on there.
Yes,
Okay, great, thank you.
yes.
And his, you can switch off his coat was off?
Yes,
He was laying down on top of his coat?
that is correct.
What was on top of his coat, his head or some other part of him?
His body was on, he was on top of his coat. I can't specifically tell you what parts, exactly what were on the top of the coat. He was laying on top of the coat.
And I think you said you took his phone, correct?
I grabbed it from the car, yes.
All right, and you took his phone so you could call for help, correct?
Yes.
Didn't dial 911, did you?
No.
Didn't call Jason Mangle, did you?
No.
Didn't call, in fact, anybody for help, did you?
That's what I wanted to do, but I couldn't.
You didn't call
No.
anyone for help, did you?
No.
Where did you grab Alex's phone from?
The car.
I'm sorry?
The car.
Where in the car?
It was in the back of the car.
Where in the back of the car?
I'd seen it in the footwell.
I'm sorry?
I had seen it inside, I spotted the phone inside the footwell.
Passenger side or driver's side?
It was in the footwell. It was just amongst,
You don't know whether it was the passenger side or the driver's side?
I remember just grabbing it from where your feet would go in the car.
Again, my question is, you don't remember if it was the passenger side or the driver's side?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. And you also took the knife along,
Yes,
carrying the knife in your right hand, correct? Or your left hand, I'm sorry, correct?
yes,
Right. The phone was in your right hand,
yes,
and then you said you fell and the phone broke and you just kind of left it there?
yes, the phone had busted, a part of it.
And then but you kept the knife with you at that point?
It was still in my hand, yes.
And you carried that knife until you got to the driveway of Mr. Sippel's daughter's residence, correct?
I had dropped it in the ditch, yes.
And that's where you dropped it in the ditch, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Just before you got to that driveway, correct?
I don't know exactly. I've seen the photos, so I know where it was, but from my memory, I don't know exactly what place I dropped the knife.
And in the photos, it shows it dropped just before that driveway, correct?
Yes, that is what the photos show.
And then you walked up to the back door of Mr. Sippel's residence, correct?
Yes, I found my way there.
You walked up to the back door of Mr. Sippel's residence, correct?
Yes,
All right. And rang the doorbell a number of times, correct?
rapidly.
Rang the doorbells a number of times, correct?
Correct.
And when you got there, you went there to try to get help, correct?
Yes,
And first thing you asked Mr. Sippel to do was to call or take you to a hospital, correct?
That's what I've heard, yes.
All right. You did not ask Mr. Sipple to call the police, did you?
No,
All right. You didn't ask Mr. Sipple to make sure no one else could get there, correct? Get in there, correct?
no,
You didn't ask Mr. Sipple if he had anything to protect you at that point, correct?
no,
But you did ask him to take you to the hospital.
yes, I've heard that, yes.
That's what you asked him, correct?
Yes,
You never told Mr. Sipple that the person that you are claiming assaulted you was lying severely wounded back where your car was stuck in the mud, did you?
no,
You never told Mr. Sipple that you had stabbed Alex Woodworth?
no,
Shortly after you arrived at Mr. Sipple's house, law enforcement officers began to arrive, correct?
yes,
Right. A number of them arrived at the residence, correct?
yes,
And at that point in time, you knew there were all these law enforcement there, right?
yes.
You knew you were safe at that point in time, didn't you?
What is hard for me with this is that I don't remember much
ma'am?
from that interaction.
If the answer is no, that's fine. You can say no. If you don't know the answer, that's fine.
Yes,
But just tell me, the question is, you knew you were safe at that point in time,
Judge,
correct?
I
She has a
don't
right to
know.
explain if a question can't be answered by yes or no. Other witnesses have certainly done it, and this court has permitted it, and I'd ask that the same consideration be given by Mr. DeFore to Ms. McCandless.
Well, that's just fine. If she can't give a yes or no answer, can't answer the question, then you tell him you don't remember.
Yes.
Can't answer the question.
I
That's you,
don't,
Judge.
I don't remember, no.
Okay, fair enough. And after law enforcement got there, you got in the ambulance with the paramedics, correct?
Yes,
Right. And you didn't tell, by the way, you didn't tell law enforcement that your car was back stuck on that mud road or that farm road, correct?
yes,
You didn't tell the law enforcement officers that first got there that you had just stabbed Alex Woodworth a number of times, correct?
correct.
And you didn't tell Mr. Wayne, the paramedic, that there was this other person that was lying there with a bunch of stab wounds in him, did you?
No,
Didn't tell him that maybe Alex was dead or dying there or needed help, did you?
no,
And you got to the hospital, correct?
yes,
At the hospital, you met first with a female nurse, correct?
I don't remember much. I remember a lot of different interactions from the hospital, but specifics are very hard for me.
All right. But you didn't tell that nurse where your car was, correct?
That is correct.
All right. In fact, at the hospital, you told people at the hospital that what happened at Owen Park, didn't you?
That's what I've seen and heard, yes.
That's what you told them, wasn't it?
Yes,
And you knew at that point in time that nothing happened at Owen Park, didn't you?
yes,
Did not tell that first nurse that you met with that somebody was attempting to sexually assault you, did you?
Can you please repeat that question?
Sure. The question was, you didn't tell that first nurse that you met with that someone was attempting to sexual assault you, did you?
I don't remember what I told the first nurse.
Isn't it true that what you told them is you don't remember what happened, correct?
That is correct.
And then you met with the sane nurse, Jennifer Morris, correct?
Yes.
And you knew at that point in time you were safe, correct?
Yes.
You did not tell Ms. Morris what happened to you, correct?
No.
In fact, you told again Ms. Morris that it happened at Owen Park, didn't you?
I don't remember saying it, but if that is in the transcript, then yes.
And you didn't tell her that you had been sexually assaulted, correct?
I don't remember what I said to her, no, but
In fact, what you told
Yes.
Ms. Morris was you couldn't remember, correct?
correct.
And then you spoke as well to Kelly Swartos, correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, I think we heard from one of your interviews, you were in a unit that was locked, correct?
Correct.
So you knew at that point in time as well you're safe, correct?
Yes, I had known I was safe.
And you didn't tell Ms. Swartos what happened to you with Alex Woodworth, did you?
I was not ready, no.
You didn't tell her, correct?
Correct.
You told her you couldn't remember, correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you knew what happened, didn't you?
There was only bits and pieces of what had happened that was coming back to me.
You knew those bits and pieces, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that it had happened in that farm road near Mr. Sippel's residence, correct?
I didn't know exactly where that road was, but I know that it had happened on that road.
And you knew that you had stabbed Alex Woodworth repeatedly, correct?
Yes.
And you knew the story that you told earlier today about Alex attacking you with a knife, correct?
No, I don't understand your question.
You knew what you testified about earlier today about Alex attacking you with a knife, correct?
I only knew parts of what had happened at that time.
But you didn't tell Ms. Swartos any of that, correct?
No.
All you told her is you can't remember anything, correct?
Correct.
Ron, I don't know how much longer the court wants to go. I mean, I'm fine to keep going as long as the court wants to, but I've got a ways to go yet.
How much more cross do you believe?
Probably more than an hour.
All right, and Ms. Vishney, I assume there would be redirect for a substantial period of time?
I would not assume that, Judge.
Okay,
I'm not even sure there's going to be any.
all right. Well, then I think this is a good time to break for the evening. Okay, council wish to go through today's sidebars, or do you want to wait till after the witness is concluded?
However the court wishes to proceed, Your Honor, is fine with me.
All right, well, let's get through some of these. I'm going to go back to approximately 8:47. It was during direct examination. Exhibit 697 was discussed at the sidebar. There is a portion of Exhibit 697 which was objected to by the state because it was a journal after March 1st, and it was expected that, given that Ms. McCandless and Mr. Woodworth were not together during that period of time, that there wouldn't have been an opportunity for her to have read any of those journals. So that portion would not be accepted or received. So we have to do something. I don't think I would allow the jury to have the journals themselves, but the portion after March 1st or later was not received. Anything the other council would like to put on the record about that?
No.
Nothing,
None?
Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, at 9:14 a.m. approximately, there was an objection by the state to questions where Ms. McCandless was talking about what Alex said about going home for the holidays and getting into his background, and I think explaining her answers rather than just answering the questions. and court sustained that on relevance. We had a sidebar, and I think Ms. Vishny indicated she was going to move on. I don't think that there's any further objection about that. Anything further, Ms. Vishny, on that? Mr. Dufour?
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right. Then, let's see. The next sidebar that we had was approximately 11:21 a.m. And this was also on direct. I believe that the objection was withdrawn. And this was reference the interview with Officer Vang and the people that provided pamphlets, and whether Ms. McCandless had ever used the terms assault or rape. I think was just before that. And I don't recall the specific objection, but it does say withdrawn, so I think that
Right, that's a non-issue.
non-issue. Okay, check that off. All right, at 2:04 p.m., still on direct examination, and there was questions about the previous vehicle accidents, and state object on relevance, and court overruled that objection. And I think at the sidebar, basically just clarified that the court had ruled that this witness, or, the defendant could testify about her previous experience as well as the expert witness. And the state still objected, and court overruled the objection, and questioning continued on that. Anything in addition you'd like to say about that, Mr. Dufour?
No.
Okay. All right, then, let's see, it was on the record. Sometime shortly after 2:16 p.m., we just took up the issues before cross-examination began. The first was a non-issue, as it turned out, about why she left her mother's residence. And but the state has made the argument, and later was allowed to present evidence of this text message. I can't remember now what exhibit it ultimately was. I think it was ended up being exhibit
598? 702?
I think it was 700, if I can find it.
700?
No,
John Hanson picture was 702,
Yep.
Judge.
702? Yes. And, but the discussion about that was before direct started. Court ultimately received Exhibit 702, and it was published to the jury along with some text. Now, give Ms. Vishny an opportunity to make a record as it relates to that objection.
Well, I objected on multiple grounds, and I argued it was irrelevant, prejudicial, that even if she was cross-examined, it shouldn't be shown to the jury under 90608 sub 2, and the court overruled all of those. Then I made a further objection that the date on the texting part should not be shown to the jury because the date itself was not relevant, and that I thought that the state was trying to leave some kind of inference that she was untruthful about what happened with sex with John because this picture was texted afterwards, and the court overruled that as well.
All right, yeah, and I think you had an opportunity to make a record there before
Yes.
cross started. Anything further, Mr. Dufour, on that?
Just to, and not to belabor it, but I just don't see how 90608 sub 2 applies, because 90608 sub 2 applies to the situation if I asked her, for example, isn't it true that you lied to so-and-so on sometime previously? And she says, no, I'm stuck with that answer. This is different. I'm impeaching her on her testimony as opposed to something that was out of court. And that's not what 90608 sub 2 deals with.
Well, I clearly disagree with Mr. Dufour's interpretation, but I think that I made an adequate record on that objection, so I don't need to further argue it.
All right, and just to indicate further, the court's reasoning is, and this applies also to the objection at 2:40 p.m. of the homepage, Instagram homepage. There's a document shown to the witness, and it had that information on it. From the court's perspective, as I had indicated at the sidebar, it did not believe that was the type of extrinsic evidence that should be excluded under 906.08 sub 2, because it was right here, you can show it to the witness. We're not calling another witness or trying to go off on a side mini trial on that issue. And simply, the state would be then precluded from going further than simply asking the question and getting the response. But because it did involve showing her a document, that's something that's here. In the court's opinion, it's not the type of extrinsic evidence, because that rule is one to try to keep these trials from lasting forever, because they would if we do those sorts of things. It's, you know, we don't want to exclude relevant evidence, but in this particular case, it was not a waste of time in the court's opinion, and that's just my reasoning. You've made your record on as to both of those. Okay, there was then at 2:49 an objection on the relevance, and this was the defense objection. Mr. Dufour was asking questions essentially about overlapping a sexual relationship, Alex and Mr. Mangle. And anything further either party would want to put on the record, I overruled the objection.
No, Your Honor.
It was a 90403 and 90404 objection by the defense.
Okay.
And 90402, I'm sorry.
Anything further? Just
No.
preserve that for the record. So
Just
that will be,
preserve that.
that objection will be preserved.
Thank you.
Okay, then 3:23 p.m., there was a sidebar. It wasn't really an objection, but it was a sidebar. And I'm not going to elaborate on that any further, but it was just Mr. Dufour explained how he was going to question a particular topic. Ms. Vishny raised her concerns, and Mr. Dufour essentially indicated he would steer around that area, and I'm not going to elaborate it for the reasons. Okay, anything further other counsel wanted to say about that?
No.
Just so that the record's clear, related to an Instagram message, so that when the record is reviewed later, if it becomes necessary. That's all.
Yes, and it was, I think you had been in the area of DOJ page 5094, or shortly thereafter, and then the transcript would show what that is. Okay, then, and 3:29, there was a sidebar, and I have a number of notes surrounding that, but essentially I think counsel agreed on how that would be approached. There was a concern, a request for a sidebar, a concern that Mr. Dufour was getting into something else, and this involved the incident that Matt Schreiner testified about, that Ms. McCandless was at Alex Woodworth's home and was in only a towel coming out of the shower and made a comment about breaking up with Alex Woodworth, but this was related to, I guess this was this string of questions, what Ms. Van de Zan had told Jason Mengel, that Jason Mengel then said that Jenna had told him about what had occurred, and then there was the phone call from the defendant to Jenna Van de Zan, and so it involved that. But I don't think that there was, I think Mr. Dufour agreed that he wasn't going to the area of concern by Ms. Vishny. Anything further either counsel would like to say about that sidebar?
Nothing, Your Honor.
No.
All right. All right, then next one I have is 4:19 p.m. and Mr. Dufour was moving into the area of cross-examining Ms. McCandless about her previous statement about how she had gotten the knife away from Mr. Woodworth, and Mr. Dufour wished to use the exhibit that Dr. Tillotson had. You know, I guess in the cross-examination, the way I saw it was that Mr. Dufour was essentially trying to show that Ms. McCandless had changed her story after seeing these pictures of what happens when someone grabs a sharp knife, and so I overruled the objection, or maybe there was no objection. I can't remember, but go ahead and anything you want to say about that, Ms. Vishny.
No, I don't believe I made an objection.
Okay, all right, so
I thought counsel was gonna cross-examine Ms. McCandless with a learned treatise, like the content, not just a photograph, which was why I initially approached.
All right, well, that clears up the sidebars, I
Yeah.
believe. Anything further? Any I've missed, Counsel?
Nothing else from the state, Your Honor?
Okay, then I would ask,
I missed.
pardon?
There's something I missed.
Okay,
And I didn't miss it today, I missed it last week, and I would beg the court and counsel's indulgence to allow me nunc-pro-tunc to make a motion for a directed verdict at the close of the state's case. I'll do so without argument, but I just want to preserve the record that the state, and I know it's in a light scene most favorable to the state, that the state has failed to put in, I think, essentially a prima facie case or adequate evidence of each and every element of the charged crime, first-degree intentional homicide. No further argument.
all right, well, I will just note that, you know, I had anticipated the potential for that and had considered the evidence, and frankly, in the light most favorable to the state, and if the jury did not believe Ms. McCandless, the state had met its burden. And so I would have ruled against a motion for a directed verdict at that point in time.
And we have no problem with, you know, the timeliness of it. We're not going to object to that.
All right. Okay.
And, Your Honor, there are a couple of exhibits. I'm not sure that I've moved 699, 700, 701, and 702. Did I move all those? I thought I had, but I just wanted to be sure. Okay.
And I guess I'll ask.
And some of those, I know, I understand we're only admitted for certain parts of them, and that's fine.
And did I neglect to move any exhibits in?
Let's see, all of those were received.
Okay, thank you.
For the content that was referred to on the record, but not the entire,
Yes.
because some of them, 699 was the Instagram homepage copy, but when you get into 700 and 701, those were
Only portions.
packet of text. And but so only those portions that were referred to on the record. Okay,
Judge, I just want to make sure that 697 was moved in. I'm pretty sure I did. And then there was also the notebook with the orange cover. I don't remember the number. 698, I moved that in as well. Okay.
yeah, I remember the orange binder was, 697 was received. And that was the table of contents. And, okay.
That's all the journals, not all of which were
It
testified
says
to.
blue binder.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is,
Prepared by the defense.
yeah, the court allowed all the journals of Mr. Woodworth that Ms. McCandless indicated she had read or could have read. So
Thank you.
March 1st later, no. Those before that,
Yes.
yes.
Are you going to address the sealing of 702?
Well, I wanted 702 to be sealed. The court has seen the exhibit, and I don't believe
Well-
that I need to make a further record explain why I wanted to seal it, but it,
All right, well, here's,
yes, or I'd like it to at least be treated as the same way the other sensitive photos in this case have been treated.
well, okay, here's the court's, I guess it's the court's position. It's an exhibit that's been received. It doesn't show any genitalia, it doesn't show breasts. It just shows someone in a position and, in an outfit, but she's clothed, it's not unclothed. So from the court's perspective, I don't believe that there would be a legitimate basis for the
I
court.
believe she
to
is
see.
unclothed, Your Honor. However, you really can't see any private parts because of the pose.
She's unclothed, but she has paint, she's covered in paint.
Right.
at
Oh.
certain points.
Well, I didn't see any in that picture what I would consider to be bare breasts or genitalia. So I'm not going to seal it, but again, we didn't put it up and publish it out of respect. But in any event, so it was requested, but the court, again, I have to consider open records and public court and all of that, and I do not believe that there's a legitimate basis under these circumstances